Memorial Day weekend, and the sprinklers were running on the front lawn even though nobody had lived in the house for 8 months. My sister Linda had insisted we keep up the yard maintenance because it needs to look presentable for potential buyers. That's the thing about Linda. She always talked about we and us when it came to decisions, but she meant me and what I want. Because that's why I'm writing this, from a small coastal town outside Auckland, New Zealand, and not from Denver anymore. The house sat on a quiet street in Lakewood, the kind of neighborhood where people still waved to each other and kids rode bikes without helmets. Dad bought it in 1978 for $43,000. The property assessor valued it at $760,000 last year. Linda's husband Rick had looked it up on Zillow at least a dozen times during the funeral reception. I saw him showing his phone to Linda, both of them nodding like they were already planning which rooms to renovate. Our parents died 4 months apart. Dad went first, a heart attack in his sleep last September. Mom followed on New Year's Eve, and the doctor said it was a stroke, but I knew better. She died of a broken heart. 62 years of marriage doesn't just end because one person is gone. Part of you goes with them. The estate attorney read the will in mid-February. Everything was split 50-50 between Linda and me. The house, the savings account with $42,000. Dad's classic Mustang that he'd been restoring for 20 years and never finished. Mom's jewelry. Everything. Linda cried during the reading. I thought she was crying for Mom and Dad. But the thing is, Linda's always been good at crying at the right moments. She cried at her wedding when Rick stepped on her dress. She cried when her daughter Emma graduated high school, even though Emma barely made it through with a 2.1 gigapascals. She cried when her son Jason got arrested for a DUI, making it about her own pain instead of his mistakes. She wasn't crying for our parents. She was crying because she'd expected more. We met at the house on Memorial Day to discuss next steps. That's what Linda called it in her text. Next steps for the property. Not Mom and Dad's house. Not the place where we grew up. The property. I got there first. I'd kept my key, the same key I'd had since I was 16. The house smelled stale. The air conditioning hadn't been running, and Colorado in late May can get warm. I walked through the rooms, remembering. The living room where Dad taught me to play chess. The kitchen, where Mom made her famous pot roast every Sunday. The back bedroom that had been mine until I left for college in 1979. Everything was exactly as Mom had left it. Her reading glasses on the coffee table, Dad's jacket still hanging by the door, their wedding photo on the mantel, both of them young and smiling like they had the whole world figured out. Linda arrived 20 minutes late. She always was. Rick was with her, and so was Emma and her husband Tyler, and Jason with his girlfriend Brittany. A whole delegation. I should have known something was up right then. Tommy, Linda said, using the nickname I'd hated since I was 12. Thanks for meeting us. It's Thomas, I said. And this is our parents' house. Of course I'd be here. She did this thing she always does. This little laugh that's not really a laugh. It's more like a dismissal. Like whatever you just said was cute but ultimately irrelevant. We sat in the living room. Rick positioned himself in Dad's recliner. I didn't say anything, but something twisted in my chest. That was Dad's chair. Rick had never even met Dad until Linda was 32. He had no right. Linda pulled out a folder. Actual printed documents. She'd prepared for this. So, Rick and I have been thinking, she started, about the house, about what makes the most sense. The will is pretty clear, I said. We both own 50%. Right, but here's the thing. She leaned forward. You're retired. You're alone. You don't need a big house like this. Rick and I, we've been in that condo for 18 years, and it's just so cramped. The kids are always over, and there's no room for the grandkids when they visit. Emma didn't have kids. Jason wasn't even married. But I let it go. What are you suggesting? I asked, though I already knew. We'd like to buy out your half, Rick said. Keep it in the family. I nodded slowly. Okay, the house is worth about $760,000, according to the county assessor. My half would be $380,000. The room went quiet. Linda glanced at Rick. Rick shifted in Dad's chair. Well, Linda said, doing that laugh again. That's technically the assessed value, But you know how these things are. The market's not great right now, and the house needs work. The roof's probably got another 5 years, max. The furnace is original. We'd be taking on a lot of repairs. The roof was replaced in 2019, I said. Dad kept all the receipts. And the furnace was upgraded in 2021. Still, Rick said, we're talking about a realistic number here. Something fair. I waited. Linda pulled out a paper from her folder. We were thinking $70,000. I actually laughed. I couldn't help it. $70,000 for a $380,000 share? It's not about the money, Tommy, Linda said. It's about family. About keeping Mom and Dad's house in the family. They'd want that. If it's not about the money, why are you lowballing me by $310,000? We're not lowballing, Rick said, his voice getting that edge it gets when he's about to lose an argument. We're offering you a clean exit. No realtor fees, no closing costs, no hassle, just a simple family transaction. Based on what valuation? I asked. Show me comparable sales. He couldn't, because there weren't any. The neighborhood had been appreciating steadily for years. Linda tried a different approach. Think about it, Tommy. What are you going to do with your half? Force us to sell? Watch some strangers move into Mom and Dad's house? That would break their hearts. They're dead, I said quietly. Their hearts are already broken. Emma gasped like I'd said something horrible. Brittany put a hand to her mouth. Linda's eyes filled with tears. I can't believe you'd say that, Linda whispered. After everything. After everything what? I asked. After you stopped visiting them the last 2 years because you were too busy? After you missed Dad's 75th birthday party? After you only showed up to Mom's hospital room once in her final week? I had pneumonia, Linda snapped. I couldn't risk getting her sick. You posted photos from a restaurant that same week. You and Rick at the Cheesecake Factory. That was for Jason's birthday. We stared at each other. The room felt hot, despite the air conditioning I'd turned on. Look, Rick said, trying to sound reasonable. We're family here. Let's not get emotional. Linda and I put together a fair offer. You can take some time to think about it. But just so you know, if you refuse, we'll have to sell the house to a third party. Split the proceeds. Pay all the taxes and fees. You'd walk away with maybe $300,000 after everything. This way, you get 70, no hassle, and the house stays in the family. You mean you get a $760,000 house for $70,000, I said. We get to preserve Mom and Dad's legacy, Linda corrected. Something you apparently don't care about. I stood up. I need some air. I walked out to the backyard. The garden Mom had kept for 40 years was overgrown. Weeds everywhere. Linda hadn't bothered to maintain it, even though she lived 20 minutes away and I lived across town. I heard the sliding door open behind me. Linda, Tommy, please, she said softly. I know you're upset. I know you miss them. But they left us this house together because they trusted us to make the right decision. The right decision for who? For everyone. For the family. She came and stood next to me. You know, Rick's been having some trouble at work. His commission checks have been smaller. And Emma and Tyler just maxed out their credit cards on that Tahoe trip. Jason needs help with his court fees from the DUI. We could really use this, Tommy. We need this house. And I don't? You're alone, she said simply. You don't have kids. Deborah's been gone for 3 years. What are you even doing with your life? You just sit in that apartment all day, doing your books and watching old movies. The words hit harder than I expected, maybe because there was some truth in them. I had been alone since Deborah died. I had been going through the motions. This house would give my family stability, Linda continued. A real home. You'd just sell it eventually anyway. You don't have anyone to leave it to. That's not the point. Then what is the point? Her voice rose. What's the point of you holding on to this out of some stubborn pride? You were never Dad's favorite anyway. You know that, right? He always said you were too serious, too rigid. He liked that I was fun, that I brought joy to his life. You just brought spreadsheets and lectures about saving money. There it was. The thing she'd probably been wanting to say for years. You were never Dad's favorite, she repeated, softer now. So why are you trying to punish his favorite daughter? I turned and looked at her. Really looked at her. She believed what she was saying. She actually thought Dad had loved her more, that she deserved more because of it. "I need to think," I said. "Think fast," Rick called from inside. "We've got a contractor coming Tuesday to give us estimates on the kitchen remodel." They left 20 minutes later. I stayed at the house until dark, sitting in the living room, trying to figure out what Dad would actually want. He'd been a simple man, worked at the railroad for 42 years, saved every penny, never flashy, never demanding, just steady. But he'd split everything 50-50 in the will. That meant something. I went home that night and couldn't sleep. Linda's words kept replaying. "You were never Dad's favorite. What's the point of you holding on to this? You're alone." By 3 a.m., I'd made a decision. I called Linda the next morning. "I've thought about your offer." "And?" She sounded hopeful. "I'll sell you my half." "Oh, Tommy, that's wonderful. 70,000, right? We can do the transfer next week." "No," I interrupted. "Not 70,000. 380,000. Silence. "That's not what we discussed," Rick said in the background. She'd put me on speaker. "You discussed 70. I'm countering with market value." "We can't afford that," Linda said. "You know we can't." "Then we sell to a third party and split the proceeds." "Tommy, please." "Or," I said slowly, "there's a third option." I let the silence hang. "What option?" Rick finally asked. "I sell you my half for 380,000. You pay me 50,000 down. The remaining 330,000 you pay monthly. $2,000 a month for 165 months. No interest." More silence. "That's insane," Rick said. "That's almost 14 years of payments." "It's a gift, actually," I said. "No interest on $330,000? That's probably $100,000 in interest I'm forgiving, and you get to keep the house. Win-win." "We'd have to pay $2,000 a month on top of our other expenses," Linda said. "You wanted the house. This is how you get it." "What if we can't make a payment?" Rick asked. "Standard promissory note terms. You miss 2 consecutive payments. I can demand full payment or foreclose." "Foreclose? You'd take the house from your own sister?" "I'd take back my share of a house that you insisted you could afford," I said calmly. "But I don't think it'll come to that. Rick makes good money. You've been telling me for years how successful he is. 2,000 a month should be manageable." I heard them whispering to each other, hands over the phone. "We need to think about it," Linda finally said. "You've got until Friday," I said. "After that, I'm listing the house with a realtor. My attorney has the paperwork ready. It's a standard arrangement, nothing unusual." "Why are you doing this?" Linda's voice cracked. "Why are you being so cruel?" "I'm giving you exactly what you asked for," I said. "The house, in the family, at a price you can afford, with payments." "This isn't what Dad would have wanted." "Dad wanted us to split everything 50-50, I said. "That's what we're doing. I'm just making it easier for you to buy my half instead of forcing a sale. Take it or leave it." I hung up. They called back 4 times that day. I didn't answer. On Wednesday, my attorney called. Linda and Rick had agreed to the terms. We'd close the following Monday. The signing took 30 minutes. Linda cried the whole time. Rick kept his jaw clenched, barely looked at me. They signed the promissory note. I signed the deed transfer. The house was now entirely theirs, secured by a $330,000 note payable to me over the next 14 years. I deposited the $50,000 down payment that afternoon. Then I went home and started planning. I'd been thinking about New Zealand for a while. Deborah and I had always talked about visiting. "When we retire," she'd say. "When we have time." But we never did. She got sick, and then she was gone. And suddenly all that time we'd been saving up meant nothing. I looked at apartments in Auckland online. Looked at residency requirements. At 63, I could qualify for a retirement visa if I had the funds. The house sale had given me those funds. I didn't tell Linda or Rick. I didn't tell anyone except my attorney, and only because he needed to handle the logistics of international payments on the promissory note. I spent the next 3 weeks tying up loose ends. Closed my small accounting practice, canceled my lease, sold most of my furniture. Put the important things, Deborah's photos, Dad's old chess set, Mom's recipe book, in a storage unit that I paid for 5 years in advance. I booked a one-way ticket to Auckland for July 15th. The first payment was due July 1st, $2,000. It arrived on June 30th, right before midnight. Linda always did cut things close. I was at Denver International Airport when the second payment was due August 1st. It didn't arrive. I texted Linda, "Payment's late." "We're working on it," she replied. "Rick's commission check was smaller this month. You have until August 8th to be current," I texted back, per the agreement. The payment arrived August 7th at 4 p.m. Mountain Time. I was already halfway across the Pacific Ocean. I found a small place in Devonport, a suburb north of Auckland. The apartment overlooked the harbor. I could see the city skyline across the water. It wasn't big, 700 square feet, but it was mine, and it was peaceful. And every morning I'd sit on the small balcony with coffee and watch the ferries crossing the harbor. I didn't tell Linda where I was. She had my email. That was enough. September 1st payment was late again. September 10th, it arrived with an email. "Tommy, please. This is really hard on us. Rick's sales are down. Can we adjust the payment amount?" I replied. "No. The terms were clear. You wanted the house. These are the terms you agreed to." October payment was on time. November payment was 5 days late. December payment was 12 days late. I sent a formal notice. Per Section 4 of the promissory note, 2 consecutive late payments constitute default. Linda called. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. Her voice was shaking. "Tommy, please. It's almost Christmas. The kids need help. Jason's trying to get his life together. Emma's pregnant now. She really is this time. We need this house. I'm begging you. Can we please talk? Can you please just come home?" I deleted the voicemail. January 1st, 2025. New payment due. January came and went. No payment. February 1st. Second payment missed. I had my attorney send the official notice. They had 30 days to pay all arrears or the property would go into foreclosure proceedings. Linda's email came on February 3rd at 2 a.m. Denver time, 9 p.m. New Zealand time. I was watching the sunset over the harbor when my phone dinged. "Tommy, I know you probably hate me right now. I know I said some terrible things. I've thought about that day at the house so many times. About what I said about you and Dad. It wasn't true. You know, it wasn't true. I was just scared and angry and I wanted the house so badly that I convinced myself I deserved it more than you. I was wrong. Dad loved you so much. He was so proud of you. The way you took care of Deborah when she was sick. The way you built your accounting practice from nothing. He used to tell me, 'Linda, your brother has character. He's got what counts.' I was jealous. That's the truth. I was jealous that you had Deborah and a career, and you seemed so together while I was just existing, living off Rick's commissions and raising kids who barely respect me. The house is too much. We thought we could afford it. We really did. But between the property taxes and the utilities and the repairs that keep coming up, plus trying to pay you, we're drowning. Rick's talking about filing for bankruptcy. Emma's pregnancy is high risk. She can't work. Jason got fired from his job at the dealership. We're going to have to sell the house. I know that now. I'm going to call the attorney tomorrow and tell him we'll list it. Whatever we get after the mortgage, wait, there is no mortgage anymore. It's just what we owe you, whatever we get. We'll pay you. All of it. Every penny. I promise. I just need you to know that I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. You were right about everything. About me not visiting Mom and Dad. About me being selfish. About all of it. You were right, and I was wrong. And I destroyed everything. I miss you. I know I don't have the right to say that, but I do. You're my big brother. You're the only family I have left now that Mom and Dad are gone. And I pushed you away because I was greedy and stupid, and I thought I deserved something I didn't earn. Please come home, or at least tell me where you are. Let me know you're okay. I love you, Tommy. I always have. Linda. I read the email 3 times. Then I walked out to my balcony. The harbor was dark except for the lights of a cruise ship coming into port. Tourists, probably, starting their New Zealand adventure. I wondered if any of them had left behind broken families, if any of them were running from something or toward something. I thought about Dad, about the last conversation we'd had before his heart attack. We'd been sitting in that same living room, and he'd asked me if I was doing okay since Deborah passed. I'd said yes, the way you do. And he'd nodded but didn't believe me. "Thomas," he'd said, "you've got to live, son, not just exist, live." At the time, I thought he was talking about dating again, or traveling, or finding some new hobby. But sitting there on my balcony in Devonport, watching the cruise ship dock, I realized what he'd meant. He meant that life is short and grief is long, and sometimes you have to make a choice. You can let people take pieces of you until there's nothing left, or you can decide what you're worth and hold that line. Linda had asked what the point of me was. Like my value was only in what I could give her. Like without Deborah, without kids, without some obvious purpose, I was just taking up space. But I had a point. I was 63 years old, and I was sitting in New Zealand watching ships come into harbor, and I'd spent 2 months learning to make a proper flat white at the local cafe, and I'd joined a chess club where nobody knew who I used to be. And yesterday, I'd hiked up Mount Victoria and seen the whole city spread out below me like a promise. That was my point. To live. To exist on my own terms. To not apologize for taking up space. I went back inside and wrote Linda a reply. "Linda, the house will sell. You'll pay off what you owe me from the proceeds. After that, what's left is yours. Consider it your inheritance. All of it. I don't want any more. I'm okay. I'm somewhere that makes me happy. That's all you need to know. I forgive you for what you said. I forgive you for trying to take advantage of me. I forgive you because holding on to anger would only hurt me, not you. But forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. I need you to understand that. You made a choice that day at the house. You chose greed over family. You chose what you wanted over what was fair. And that has consequences. I hope your kids figure things out. I hope Rick's sales improve. I hope Emma's pregnancy goes well and Jason gets his life together. I genuinely mean that. But I'm not coming home. Colorado isn't home anymore. This is... Take care of yourself. Thomas. I pressed send before I could second guess it. The house sold in March. After the real estate fees and the debt to me, Linda and Rick walked away with about $85,000. They bought a condo in Aurora, smaller than the one they'd had before. Linda sent me an email with photos. "It's cozy," she wrote. "We're making it work." I didn't reply. Rick's LinkedIn shows he's working at a different dealership now. Jason's Facebook says he's engaged to a different girl. Emma had her baby, a girl, in April. Linda posts photos of her granddaughter constantly. They look happy, or happy enough. The kind of happy that comes after you've lost everything and realized you can survive it. I went back to Colorado once, in September, for the 1-year anniversary of Dad's death. I visited their graves, brought flowers, sat there for an hour, talking to them the way I used to talk to Deborah at her grave before I left. I told Dad he was right. About living. About having a point. I told Mom I was sorry I hadn't protected her house better. Hadn't kept it in the family like she'd wanted. But then I thought about what she'd actually wanted, which was for Linda and me to be okay. To be happy. And the house had become a weapon. Getting rid of it was the only way forward. Linda texted me while I was at the cemetery. "Are you in town? The GPS on the family phone plan shows you're in Lakewood." I'd forgotten I was still on the family plan. Old habits. "Just visiting," I texted back. "Can we meet, get coffee?" I looked at Mom and Dad's headstone. Thomas and Margaret Brennan. Together for 62 years. Together forever. "No," I texted Linda. "I don't think so. Please. I just want to see you. To say I'm sorry in person. You already said sorry. I already forgave you. But I'm not going to forget. Take care, Linda." I blocked her number after that. Not out of anger. Just out of necessity. She'd keep reaching out if I didn't. And every time she did, it would pull me back into an orbit I'd worked hard to escape. I flew back to Auckland the next day. My apartment felt more like home than anywhere I'd lived in the past 3 years. I joined a gym. Started learning to cook properly. Deborah had always done the cooking. I'd been living on takeout and frozen dinners for years, but there was something meditative about chopping vegetables and following recipes. I made Mom's pot roast from memory. It wasn't as good as hers, but it was close. I met a woman named Claire at the chess club. She's 60, a widow like me, from Australia originally. We play chess every Thursday, and sometimes we get dinner after. It's not romance. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But it's companionship. It's two people who've lived full lives sitting across from each other and not having to explain the weight they carry. Last week, she asked me why I moved to New Zealand. I'd been avoiding the question for months. I told her the whole story. The house, Linda, Rick, the promissory note, the emails, all of it. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she moved her bishop and said, "Checkmate." I looked at the board. She'd won while I'd been talking. "You're better when you're distracted," she said with a small smile. "You think too much when you're focused." "Story of my life?" I said. "Your sister asked what the point of view was," Claire said, resetting the board for another game. "Did you ever figure it out?" I thought about that, about the past 9 months in New Zealand, about the mornings on my balcony, about learning to cook, about chess club, about this woman across from me who'd listened to my story without judgment. "Yeah," I said. "I think I did." "What is it?" "The point is that I get to decide. Not her. Not anyone else. Me." Claire nodded. "Good answer." We played another game. I lost again. But this time I wasn't distracted. This time I was just present. Right there in that moment. And that, I realized, was the whole point. I don't know if Linda thinks about me much anymore. I don't know if she tells her grandkids about the uncle they've never met. I don't know if she regrets what happened or if she's moved on completely. It doesn't matter, because I have a point now. Every morning when I wake up and see the Auckland harbor outside my window, every Thursday at chess club, every time I make one of Mom's recipes and it actually turns out decent, every time I go for a hike and remember that I'm 63 years old and alive and free, that's my point. To be here, to exist without apology, to take up space in this world and not feel guilty about it. "You were never Dad's favorite," Linda said. But Dad didn't have favorites. He had 2 kids he loved equally, and he split his estate 50-50 because that's what fair looked like to him. Linda couldn't see it because she'd spent her whole life measuring love in terms of what she got versus what I got, instead of understanding that love isn't a competition. I don't hate her. I don't wish bad things on her. But I don't need to be in her life anymore either. Some relationships are like houses. They have a foundation, they shelter you for a while, but eventually you realize you've outgrown them. Holding on to them just because they're familiar doesn't make them right for you. I chose myself. After 63 years of being the responsible one, the steady one, the one who showed up and did the right thing and never asked for anything in return, I chose myself. And from my balcony in Devonport, with the harbor wind in my face and a whole life ahead of me, that feels like the best decision I've ever made. That's the point of me.